Hey, my spookies. Before we get to tonight's story, I want to say a huge thank you to everybody who has helped me pay my dog Chicano's chemotherapy bills. We've raised $3,731. I really appreciate it. That's almost half of all of the medical expenses he'll be incurring. And if you want to help and get involved, any amount helps so much and is just so appreciated. Just go to weeklyspooky.com and click on Help My Dog. It really is massively appreciated, and I thank you so very much. But now, my friends, it's time for the show. Some say no one is ever given more weight than they can bear, but those people probably aren't pushing a gigantic boulder up a hill, and they probably didn't grow up in a single-parent household, eating hamburger helper without the hamburger. Well, what happens when you find out maybe there's a way to even the odds of the cross you bear?
What's that? You want to be scared? Come with me. You will experience tales of horror, ghosts, and death. It is not recommended for the weak at heart. Listen in the dark. It's more fun that way. This is Weekly Spooky.
Hello, my spookies. It's Wednesday, and you know what that means. It's time for a little spooky in your weekly. I'm your host and narrator, Enrique Couto, and I am very excited to bring you this terrifying tale. But first, I want to say, very simply put, thank you for listening. Especially right now, in March, when most people, for whatever reason I can't understand, are not thinking all about Halloween and the spooky side of life. You all are the diehards. You all are the people who embrace spooky as a full-blown way of life. And I am so glad to have you here with me every week. And believe me, I have no plans on stopping. In fact, on Friday, there'll be a little something special waiting for you right here on the feed, so make sure you're subscribed on your favorite podcasting app. And if you want to help the show directly without spending any money whatsoever, while you're on your favorite podcasting app, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartMedia, or any other, just leave us a 5-star rating, because those ratings tell new listeners that the show is good and it's the kind of thing they'll like if they like this kind of thing. And of course, if you want to help us in a more direct way, you can go to weeklyspooky.com and for as little as $1 a month, get bonus episodes and so much more when you subscribe on Patreon. Just go to weeklyspooky.com, click on Patreon, and join the Spookies community. And if you want to hang out with all the wild spookies and authors, you can go to Facebook and search Weekly Spooky Tomb of Terror. That's where we hang out, share scary memes, and have a good time. But now, my dear listener, it's about time for the story. So get comfortable and get ready to root for your home team as we present this story after these quick words from our sponsors. Tarnished Gold by David O'Hanlon. The brownish-yellow roach moved sluggishly through the tacky, artificially colored sauce of the boxed mac and cheese. Carlton watched the little bug struggle through its delicious entrapment. It was a similar meal that inspired him as a child. He was 11 at the time and taking care of his siblings, as usual, while his father pulled another double at the fiberglass factory. Little Carlton lifted the bag of stale, off-brand cereal to pour himself a bowl when a fat American cockroach scurried out from between the sugar-frosted oats and plopped into the awaiting milk. He had watched it swim around in the bowl for several minutes before flushing it all down the toilet. Life wasn't much different between the roaches and the tenants of their building. You were just struggling to eat until someone snuffed you out. He worked his ass off every day after that to get an athletic scholarship. Carlton lifted the bug, a little German, gingerly so as not to squish it. He flicked his wrist, casting it into one of the dingy, dark corners of the shitty motel room. He wondered if the rest of the hive ran out to catch it like the cheerleaders at his games. His lip twitched at the memory of happier times and came dangerously close to a smile. He'd come so far only to end up at the chipped folding card table with a bowl full of microwave macaroni and cheese. Carlton stirred the food with a plastic fork and shoveled a bite into his mouth. Heavy rings rapped against the flimsy motel door. The pleasantry seemed unnecessary, seeing as Carlton was there on the knocker's invitation, but the man on the other side of the door was big on manners. Carlton swallowed the bite and called for his benefactor to come in. The door creaked open, and the shadowy figure loomed just outside of the jamb. The flickering hall light revealed a gaunt face adorned with gold piercings that stood in stark contrast to the corpse-like flesh. The man kicked the door jamb, knocking free a dozen or so roaches that had been waiting inside. He slinked into the room and gently closed the door. "Mr. Day," Carlton said with a soft, bitter voice, "would you join me for dinner?" The guest stalked around Carlton before settling into the cracked vinyl seat opposite him. He took off his sunglasses and gazed conspicuously at Carlton with his piss-stain-colored eyes. Mr. Day steepled his fingers in mock prayer. Each was adorned with a championship ring won by a previous client. Day slammed his hands onto the table, making Carlton jump. "I regrettably won't be partaking in your fine culinary talents," Day hissed. "At my age, one must be leery of their diet. I've gone keto." Carlton raised an eyebrow, unsure if Day was serious. "Carlton Gold, the golden dream." Day fiddled with his thick double-aught septum ring. "First round draft pick, $500 million contract extension, and 2 Super Bowl victories. Generally, people come to me to get where you are." I don't know," Carlton sighed. "It's like the whole damn league has me scouted. I've thrown more interceptions in 3 games than I have in 3 seasons. I'm not living up to the expectations." "Yes, it has been an unfortunate season, thus far." Day tapped his black nails on the table. "If you were to win the next 3 games, you'd still make the playoffs, however. One of those games is against Detroit, so that's a lock. Surely you can manage the other 2 without my assistance." Carlton stared into his bowl of mac, wordlessly. "You're the most dynamic player in the history of the sport," Day said, pointedly. "You maintain constant awareness of everything on the field, constantly calculating and adjusting to whatever happens. If I didn't know any better, I'd say you'd already made a deal with one of my brethren." "No, Carlton, you are wrong. The league doesn't have you scouted. There's nothing lacking in your ability." "Yeah, you're right, I guess. I can't get my head straight, man. I played like shit last Monday." "And the Sunday before," Day reminded him. "My girl is on social media with excuses, blaming coach, blaming the refs, demanding rule changes for me. People see that and think it's coming from me." "She is quite the harpy. A good fit for my PR department someday," Day smirked. "What else, Carlton? What else has your mind in such a boggle?" "I wanted to take care of the people I love, you know? I gave them money, but now they act like they always had it. Even my old man is talking down to people that took care of us when he couldn't." "They don't say it's the root of all evil for nothing." Day looked around the motel room. "They really need to repaint. Lighter colors make it look more open, don't you think?" What? The room. Day gestured around them. Maybe it's the millennium spent languishing in hell, but I find humans to be so petty when it comes to their abode. A new coat of paint and fresh carpets, and this would be as nice as any other. You see, humans love to say, God will provide, but did he not? Carlton looked at the demon in bewilderment. He'd expected Mr. Day to approach the deal like a car salesman or a politician. The world was created with everything in position for life to succeed, Day continued. Shelter, water, food, everything you need was provided as a circumstance of your creation. You people pray to God to give you better. He never answers, and why would he? Man said the shelter God gave him didn't have enough square footage. The food was too bland, the water wasn't sparkling. So you turn to more nefarious providers. What is this? Carlton asked. You're supposed to help. You said you could do that. Now you want to talk me out of it? You misunderstand. I'm merely providing you perspective. Mr. Day took out his phone and sat it on the table. The latest tweet from Carlton's girlfriend was already pulled up. You seem disturbed to learn the avarice of your loved ones. I'm saying this to show you that it is simply human nature. Mankind is never happy with anything given. Carlton slapped the bowl off the table. That's why I'm trading. Trade? Day sneered with genuine disgust. What would you trade me? A soul? Sorry to say, but even the roaches have those. No, souls are quite useless to a man of my particular position. The market value of human souls is remarkably low at the moment, I might add. I mean, do you watch the news, Carlton? You lot are barely better than us demons nowadays. Then how does this work? The service I provide is custom to the needs of the client. Mr. Day adjusted a Stanley Cup ring on his pinky. Sure, I can gift you with athletic prowess or mental acuity to make you the very best, but, as I said, your problem lies not in your abilities. You're already the very best. What you need is something more akin to, therapy. Carlton looked over the stoic, heavily pierced face of Mr. Day. The demon licked his pallid lips and stood, circling around beside Carlton. He rested a hand on the quarterback's shoulder. Do you trust me, Carlton? You're a servant of Satan, so I feel like that's a redundant question. Exactly, and that's why I'm not going to ask you to put on a blindfold for the trip we're about to take. I appreciate that. You won't when you wake up. All Carlton saw was $50,000 worth of diamonds and gold streaking towards his face. He was pretty sure one of the championship rings had a Red Bull on it. Then his brain was playing ping pong inside his skull, and everything went black. Carlton rolled over and tried to blink away the world's most expensive concussion. He rose to his knees and found himself in a blacklit room full of psychedelic posters and waving inflatable men. He tried to stand and immediately threw up the sparse contents of his stomach. Roaches scurried in the puddle, and he stumbled backwards, away from them. Something scratched at the inside of his cheek. Carlton spat hard. He didn't look at the insect that came out, as if it would somehow change the fact that it had been inside him. He wiped his mouth on the sleeve of his compression shirt and paused. The white material glowed in the blacklight. He hadn't been wearing it before. Carlton looked down and realized he was in his uniform, minus the helmet. A sharp whistle drew his attention to the exit and the ghoulish thing that lumbered there in funerary trappings. Its hands were large and mottled with black rot and crimson wounds. Maggots writhed around the ragged holes, and between its worn fingers, the creature held Carlton's helmet. Carlton hesitated and then moved closer to the thing. It nudged the helmet closer to him, until he finally took it. "What is this? A nightmare?" "Isn't that what you've been living in?" Mr. Day's voice asked from somewhere, or maybe it was everywhere. "Your teammates defecate on your name because you can't be perfect. Your lover makes a mockery of you before the fans, and those same fans say you betrayed their trust by not delivering their pathetic city another title. Your father, your brothers, they all want more. How much have you given for their comfort?" Carlton turned the helmet in his hands and looked around. "What do you want me to do?" "What you've already been doing," Day said. "I want you to break your body, but this time I want you to do it for yourself. I don't back losers, Carlton. Prove to me that you're ready for the greatness you deserve." The exit creaked open. Strobing lights illuminated a long hall full of misery. Spikes adorned the walls. The scent of rotting meat trapped in the metal teeth wafted toward him, and he fought to keep from throwing up again. "We know you'll suffer for others," Day told him. "Your first test will require you to suffer for yourself. The walls will close in as you move through the hall. The speed with which they close, that's up to you. If they're going too fast, you need only spend some pain. You're a smart boy. I'm sure you'll figure it out. Now let's get a move on. There's still 3 weeks till playoffs after all, and my schedule is quite full." Carlton stepped into the hall, and the walls jumped a full foot from their previous position. Carlton sprinted and the walls drew nearer. He felt steel dragging through flesh and cried out. The walls halted. Carlton slid to a stop. The spikes crept toward him once more. Carlton looked from one end of the hall to the other. He was damn near dead center. When he was running, they came together faster. When he screamed, they stopped. "Spend some pain," he repeated. "Fuck me." Carlton steeled his nerve and grabbed hold of his pinky. He bent the digit backwards with a yelp. It worked. The walls shuddered and stopped momentarily. He started down the hall once more, and the environment responded, coming back to life in pursuit of their prey. Carlton gripped the next finger and broke it on the run. It bought him more time. An accidental brush against the artificial fangs gave him just a little more time. He broke the middle finger next, but the effect wasn't as noticeable. It seemed the further down the hall he went, the more costly the journey became. Carlton gripped his index finger and prepared to do the deed once more. He calculated the distance remaining and knew it wouldn't be enough. "God damn it!" He slapped his palm against the wall. That did the trick. Carlton jerked his hand off the steel spine and stared at the exit through the hole in his palm. He angled his body through the narrowing space. He could hear fabric tearing as certain death drew nearer still. The gory spikes tugged at his jersey. He'd need to make one more payment if he was going to survive the first trial. Carlton wiggled the hole around with another spike. "Are you watching?" Carlton clamped his teeth together. Then he jerked down hard. The flesh gave easily, splitting his hand in half. The walls grated to a stop. Carlton scurried between the points and out the door at the opposite end of the hallway before he collapsed. A resounding thump signaled his narrow escape. "Very impressive, Carlton," Mr. Day said from the far side of the new room. "I'd give you a hand, but I see how poorly you treated your last one." Carlton held the appendage up. It looked like the letter Y, with the bottom 2 fingers flopping about. He gagged at the sight. He felt antennas tickling his gums and choked it down. Another lumbering ghoul slunk across the blood-stained floor of the room. Carlton took in his surroundings. Meat hooks swayed in a moldy, cool breeze. The walls were adorned with floor-to-ceiling mirrors, only they weren't reflecting anything, except Carlton. The ghoulish thing gripped Carlton's waist and drooled a lavender slime from between its leprous lips. The squelch of duct tape peeling away from the roll snapped his attention to the quality medical service as the creature hastily wrapped up Carlton's slobber-soaking wounds. "Budget cuts?" he asked weakly. "On the contrary, Carlton." Mr. Day cleared his throat and fanned the air. "Hell gets far more doctors than heaven. Or have you not gotten a medical bill lately?" "The team pays those," Carlton said. "Ah, yes." Day snapped his fingers as if he'd only just remembered the purpose of the room. "Your team. The fans. It is so unfair the weight that they put on your shoulders. That pick six in Vegas, for example. Isn't that when the name started? Tarnished gold?" Carlton watched the monster finish the field dressing on his hand. The pain was turning to a dull throbbing. His mind weighted the possibilities. Either it was some magical effect of the ghoul's drool, or he was dying from blood loss. What twisted, sicko game would he even be able to play in this condition? Don't go away. Weekly Spooky will be right back. "The fans turned on you in a single game," Day continued. "Two more in the team did the same. How dare you stop being perfect, you selfish little prick? The self-image of thousands of middle-aged losers depends on the success of this city's football team. Did you forget about that?" "What's the next trial?" "I'm getting to that," Day snorted. "When the team fails, they blame you. The fans just need someone to be mad at. It's an easy sell. You alone carry the weight of their expectations and failures, and then divvy up the spoils of your own success. Tonight, you'll carry a different kind of weight. The weight of being Carlton Gold." Carlton watched Day slink around the room like a tomcat. The demon's black-tipped fingers teased one of the meat hooks, and he gave a sharp nod to a wall of mirrors. Carlton followed Day's dull yellow gaze. The mirrors still reflected Carlton, but not in the moment. He saw himself as a boy, offering half of his sandwich to his brother because he was still hungry. In another pane, he was teenaged, shaking off exhaustion as he stocked shelves at a Kroger. A third revealed him recycling cans in college to help another student cover the cost of books. All around him, the mirrors reflected Carlton's sacrifices. "Your desire to help others, to share whatever minuscule gift you were given, is borderline masochistic," Day said. "You've suffered your entire life trying to provide comfort to everyone around you. That's the real pain for you. It isn't that the fans hate you or that your team blames you for their shortcomings. It's the knowledge that you're letting them down. Who lifts you up, Carlton? Who carries you when you need it?" Carlton turned around the room. Every mirror distorted in a warbling haze and showed his teammates bad-mouthing him at press conferences, social media posts from fans, family members holding their hands out for payment, and his girlfriend complaining about the quality of whatever gift he'd most recently given her. The answer hung on Carlton's tongue as disgusting and pestilent as the roaches he'd vomited up before. No one. Carlton hung his head and cried, silently. He sniffled and rubbed his nose clean. The ghoul gave him a seemingly sympathetic groan before tugging a meat hook loose from the ceiling. The chain clanked along its hoist raucously, and the monster held its rusted point in front of Carlton's face. It carefully plucked a sliver of gray-green flesh from the curve and discarded it over its hunched shoulder. Carlton's stomach pitched. The next trial would also be paid for, in pain. "Take off your pads, Carlton," Day said, almost somberly. "If you wish to continue, that is." Carlton struggled to remove his jersey and shoulder pads one-handed, while the demon continued speaking. You have a talent on the field that the sport has never seen before. Do you ever wonder why?" Mr. Day gingerly peeled Carlton's jersey over his head. "If I traded in souls, I couldn't afford the price of yours. All the adversity you faced, the hardships, the hatred, those are not the machinations of hell, Carlton. Rather, that is the work of men created in God's own image. Your species is vile by design." "God wants us to be evil?" "In a very short-sighted way, yes," Day shrugged. "If every day is sunny, you appreciate the rain. If it rains all the time, you pray for the sun. Good and evil are matters of perspective. Humanity is a tempest of sin. That storm allows the rays of light to shine brightest, and you shine very brightly, my friend." "You're saying God made me so talented because I'm not a douchebag?" "You are one of the only purely good people I've ever met. It makes my blood boil being in your presence, frankly." Day kicked the discarded shoulder pads to the side. "God doesn't answer prayers. Ask and you shall not receive. You earned the bestowments he gifted you with. God demands payment in pain as well. That is why you hurt the way you do. The reason you can't get your head straight, as you said. Your soul is too pure for the weight you carry for the filth of this world." "What's next?" Carlton asked Day, but never took his eyes off the hook. "Relief," Day said. "If you can bear it, take on the weight of your love. Carry yourself like you do everyone else." "Get on with it," Carlton said meekly. His glare snapped to meet Day's face. His face hardened with grim determination. "Hook me up." The mirrors distorted once more. Teenaged Carlton stepped out of one polished surface. The monster grabbed Carlton's arm and worked the hook through the thick muscles of his back. Day seized Carlton from the right and repeated the process with another cold, tetanus-infused spike. The chain tightened, tugging at his latissimus. He looked over his shoulder to see his teenage self twisting, hardened links around his neck. Another reflection stepped into the real world sporting his college uniform. The doppelganger took the opposite end of the left chain and began looping it around its waist. Carlton felt the muscles straining as the two versions of himself walked back to their mirrors. Another pair of hooks ripped through the cords of his hamstrings. The little boy who gave everything for his siblings tugged at one of them. A more recent version of himself pulled at the other. Skin stretched painfully from the pulsing tissue below as more kind-hearted reflections surrounded him and sank new hooks into his back and shoulders. A dozen chains jangled from the curved hardware piercing his flesh. Mr. Day sauntered away and opened a door. He shook his head softly. His thin, dead lips peeled away to reveal a smoker's smile. "If anyone can do it, it's you," he said. "If anyone had a reason not to, that would also be you. You deserve your greatness because of the man you are. But can you live with the pain that comes with being that man?" Carlton's face contorted with pain and sadness. Both were too unbearable for him to speak. "Carry the weight of your own soul through this door." Day held his hands out pleadingly. "Or cut them loose. Take out the hooks and never feel the spiritual torment of your own goodness again, Carlton." Carlton raised a trembling hand and felt the steel pulling taut. It would be easy to tear it out. He'd be free of all his pain and never feel the burden of disappointing those around him ever again. He'd be able to finally enjoy his success. He looked at the demon waiting by the door. Carlton's foot lifted slowly, and he took a grueling step forward. Mr. Day took a deep breath and gave a nod of approval. "I'll see you shortly," he said, departing. The distance wasn't that great. Carlton trudged forward. Blood cascaded from his wounds. His clones cried out for him to stop, told him how much he was hurting them. He glanced back between his own screams and saw the chains cutting deep into their flesh as he dragged them along. They begged for him to let them go. But he wouldn't give up. He buried his toe in the floor and pushed himself forward. "Leave us!" one of the doppelgangers called out. "Think of the fans! Look what you're doing to your body!" Carlton's knee buckled and struck the concrete floor. He saw a slab of muscle dangling over his calf. Carlton punched his knuckles to the ground and began to crawl. He was almost to the door. The pleas became more frantic. They reminded him of Sissy, the love of his life. How could he support her if he crippled himself? What about his father? Did he want him going back to the factory? How would Carlton Sr. pay for his condo on those wages? Could Coach count on that second-string has-been to get them to the Super Bowl? Of course not. "Why are you being so selfish, Carlton?" his prepubescent double screamed. Carlton locked his teeth together in determination. He wasn't selfish. He loved those people. He loved everyone. Everyone except himself. The years of giving had ripped him apart more than Mr. Day's sadistic therapy. He needed to show himself the same commitment he gave the rest of the world. Carlton gripped the door jamb and jerked himself through the portal. Carlton sat up and looked himself over. His body was covered in duct tape and damp, sticky clothing. He wasn't sure how long he'd been unconscious. At least it hadn't been from another head injury. He moved to his knees and looked around at the carnival midway. A sherbert sky promised a new day. Surely part of the demon's designs. Mr. Day knelt beside Carlton and rested a hand on his shoulder. "There's one more trial remaining." "What's it going to cost me?" Carl asked with sudden clarity. "You never told me that. What do I owe you for this?" "As I said before, I don't back losers. I stand to make a fortune on your successful return to the gridiron, Carlton." Day stood and shrugged. "I'm a prince of hell. I have legions of demons at my command in a castle with a beautiful, albeit burning, lakeside view. What could I ask for?" "Helping me out of the kindness of your heart?" "Of course not." Day laughed, then fell silent. His grim countenance managed to twist into something even more morbid and dreary. "Humanity was never anything more than entertainment for a bored retiree. God created your species last. He gave you free will and corruption in equal measure to see if man could find its own way back into his grace." "We're not doing a very good job," Carlton said. "Certainly not. Certainly not. There are those that are, however. Those like yourself." Day walked away from Carlton toward a structure concealed by a battered plastic tarp. "Look how he punishes you for your purity. The experiment was a failure, Carlton. The light does not stand out in the darkness, but rather gets swallowed up by it." Carlton forced himself to stand. Mr. Day picked up a football and tossed it to him. Carlton caught it with a groan. The demon lifted a corner of the tarpaulin. "I live in a place without divinity or light," Day said somberly. "Remember what I said about the motel room? That's what this place is to me. Your world is the motel where I hang my hat after a long day's work. People like you, though oh so rare good people, you're the fresh coat of paint this cesspool needs. Helping you helps me. Are you ready for me to help you one last time?" Carlton waved his mangled hand to the mysterious structure. "Let's finish this." Mr. Day tugged the tarp hard, and the plastic broke up into millions of roaches that spilled to the ground and scurried away into the shadows of still, forgotten carnival rides. A dunking booth stood in the midway. A wooden arm supporting a bullseye jutted out from one side. A transparent box at the base revealed a series of axles lined with saw blades. The machinery whirred to life. Lights flickered on around the booth, and then throughout the carnival. Rides powered on, and the air filled with the laughter of departed souls partaking of the amusements. Fanfare played through the archaic speakers. Carlton shook his head and turned away. Sissy sat on the narrow bench above the awaiting saws. "Do you understand, Carlton?" Day asked. Carlton paced in a tight circle and didn't answer. "Sure you do," Day told him. "Your failures on the field are a penalty flag thrown against your overwhelming goodness. One blemish, one selfish act will put just enough dirt on your soul to alleviate the pain you feel." "I'm not doing this." "You won't fail those that depend on you any longer. You'll be able to carry all the burdens they so unjustly put on you because you'll have finally done something for yourself," Day said. "Do this. Show me that MVP accuracy and hit the target." "It's murder." "It's surgery," Day snarled. "You're too good for this world. It will drag you down until you put a bullet in your brain and end up another unfortunate suicide toiling in my sulfur pits. I have enough of those. Imagine what this place would be like if there were more people like you, Carlton. One little stain, and you can endure all this place will throw at you. You can be here where you're truly needed and reach others. Earth will never be another heaven, but it doesn't have to become another hell either." Carlton turned and stared into the pleading eyes of his girlfriend. Her life hung in the balance of his decision, and it was the same look she gave him when she wanted another $1,000 purse or piece of jewelry she'd only wear once before something shinier caught her eye. He realized what that look really meant. She wasn't truly afraid. It was the manipulative pout of a spoiled princess that knew she'd get her way because Carlton would never turn anyone away. She was probably typing a tweet in her head about her ordeal while she waited for him to drop the ball. Would she acknowledge his future failures were the chivalrous cost of saving her life, or would she blame him for their predicament when he got traded to Cleveland? Could Sissy even survive in a place like Cleveland? Carlton set his fingers between the laces. "You still need that help in your PR department, Mr. Day?" The demon's lips curled into a gleeful smile. The ball left Carlton's hand in a tight spiral and struck the bullseye with a sharp crack as the wooden target splintered from the impact. Sissy didn't even scream as the bench folded underneath her. The box filled with the sloshing, chunky puree of her Pilates-perfect body. Day stalked to meet Carlton halfway and rested a bony hand on his shoulder. "I'm glad you'll be sticking around, Carlton," the demon hissed. "Make the world a better place. Teach others to be as loving and compassionate as you. After all, my friend, a game is only fun when a worthy opponent is playing the other side of the field." "See you in hell, Mr. Day." Carlton limped away from the demon as his wounds stitched themselves back together. "Maybe." The demon watched his client heading toward the sunrise. He stuck his bejeweled hands into his pockets and laughed. Carlton Gold would do so many good things in the long life ahead of him. He'd reach millions of people and make the world a little less shitty. Day smiled. After all, every demon was once an angel. I really enjoyed that one, and I hope you did too, even though it may have hit a little close to home in ways that aren't entirely comfortable. That was a great one, written by the legend, David O'Hanlon, the man behind all of the Babysitter Massacre books, which you can find on Amazon and Audible right now. And he knows how to spin a yarn, that's for sure. Remember, this Friday there'll be a little something special waiting for you on the feed here, so make sure you're subscribed on your favorite podcasting app. And I want to take a moment to say a big thank you to our Patreon backers. You folks help us bring the spooky every single week, no matter what. And that's right, we're not just here in October. We're always here for you, bringing the scary stories and the fun every single week. And I do want to mention this summer we'll be hitting our 200th episode, and we have something very special planned. So, make sure you're subscribed. And if you want to support us in a big way, you can become a Patreon podcast booster. Join a crowd of folks who want to hear their names on the end of every show. They are Bobbletopia.com, Megan Hua, Julia Kirsch, Christopher Sullivan, Brent McCullough, Gino Lyons, Steve King, Karen Weemet, Jack Kerr, and Craig Cohen. If you want to join them, all you have to do is go to weeklyspooky.com, click on Patreon, and select any option over $15 a month. That's right, you can hear your name on the show and receive bonus episodes, special behind-the-scenes content, and so much more, including the soon-to-come spooky watch parties. You won't want to miss those. Watching a scary movie with me can be quite an experience. But now, my friends, I've got to get out of here. I have many, many things to attend to because we have so much scary content coming right at you. So for myself, for our executive producer Rob Fields, for our composer Ray Mattis, and our producer Dan Wilder, I will talk at you next time.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to find your way back next week. But for now, you are safe. Trust me.